Hi, and welcome to episode 110 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you would probably know me as Heartland Knits if you're on Ravelry or Instagram. And today is Sunday, June 21st, 2015. It is officially summer. I love summer. I love everything about it. And I actually think I might knit a little more in summer than I do in winter, just because I love to sit out on the porch and the light is so good and it's my favorite thing. So I have 2 weeks worth of knitting to show you. So I'm going to jump right in with what's been on my needles. And I have been knitting a lot. I'm not going to have maybe a lot to show because, yeah, I'll tell you about it. So I think I will show you a couple things. So I have this in my little Girl Cave bag, little bird bag, and I showed you I had cast on these a couple of weeks ago because we're having a mitten along in the Ravelry group for all summer. Just knit any like mittens that you want to. There's a couple people doing twine mittens, a couple people doing stranded mittens, and I know there's several more who are joining in. So it's a fun little thing to do. So this is as far as I am on my second of my twine mittens. I knit this one last winter, so I had to get the second one done, and I kind of got it up to this place. It's just a couple of inches past the thumb opening, and after this it's kind of just a straight shot of twining every stitch up till you get to where the decreases are. And I kind of just ended it off here, or just quit working on it, because I thought it might be a good thing to take to ZK, which this is ZK Getaway Week. ZK is held next weekend, so I'm looking forward to that. But I thought this would be something really kind of easy to work on while I'm there, because last year I was not knitting at all. I remember sitting on the podcaster panel with just like my hands in my lap and not knitting at all. But this year I feel like knitting, so I thought this would be a good thing to do. I am using Blackberry Ridge, their wool and silk yarn, and the gauge on it is 10 stitches to the inch, and I'm doing that on size 0 needles, which are 2 millimeter. I like to do things with 2 circulars, so I have one Haya Sharp and one Chalgu, and I did this kind of very traditional kind of red cast on, and then you use the ends of it to make just a little braid, so you don't have to like weave in ends for this like start. So I did that, so that's all finished up. So that is one thing that I worked on. It's a really small gauge, and there's quite a few stitches on the needle, so just that little bit took a while. And I also had, not last week, but the week before, I had one of those. It was a really kind of stressful and bad week. And that's kind of why I didn't record last week. I was just not feeling it. So, but I had one of those weeks where I had like waiting around to do. And so I worked on this. I started the second sock. It's like all seconds today. So I have been knitting this sock just a little bit at a time, at a time, whenever I need to have a plain vanilla project where I don't have to think or look or anything. I think I started the first one when I went to the movies on New Year's Day. And so now I am up. I'm not really far, but I started the second one, and did just this much. Just kind of sitting around and waiting for, I had to take my car in, and it was like a big thing, and I was there for a long time, went in like several times, and you know, that kind of stuff. And so this yarn is a lollipop yarn, and it is the flirt color. I looked it up and I found it. It's the flirt color. And it is kind of my regular plain vanilla. This is also knit at 10 stitches to the inch, and I am using size 0 needles. I have 76 stitches on. You know, I keep hearing or like reading on Instagram and people like talking about their sock knitting, because it's a fun, popular thing to do. And people always talk about what size needles they use. It doesn't really matter what size needles you use. It matters what gauge you get, you know, because people say, I only use 1s, I use 2s, or it doesn't matter. I could use like 1s and get perfectly, you know, fine. What I would get 9 stitches to the inch, I know, but you might get 8 and someone else might get 7. It doesn't really matter what needles, it's what gauge you get. So, and however you like the fabric of your socks. So I like mine knit really tightly, so I knit it to 10 stitches to the inch, and that's because otherwise I feel the little pearl bumps. And I used to, way back before I kind of ratcheted down my gauge, I used to knit the soles of the sock like inside out. I had the stockinette side on the inside and the kind of pearl bumps on the outside to make it so it didn't like irritate the bottom of my feet. And then I kind of learned to take my gauge down, and you know, this is like, just, it doesn't have to be done. I have a lot of socks. This is just like fun, and I'm also planning on taking this to ZK, because I figure this is another good, you know, little project to take along. I don't have to look at it when I'm there or whatever. And I have this in my little Java Jenny bag, which I love these bags, especially for like a little project like this, because it's super lightweight. So if I would hook it on my arm, it's not weighing down my wrist, but a lot of times I will like put this through the handles of my purse, and so it'll like go from there. But anyway, project number 2. And then the third thing I have to show you is, so remember this yarn. I've been working on a shawl out of this yarn since I think back in May, like the beginning of May probably. Now we're getting towards the end of June. So I was knitting a Boo Knits shawl out of this yarn, and this is some hand spun yarn. It is alpaca and silk. I spun it last spring, and it's really soft. It's these pretty greens. The fiber came from Lisa Sousa, and so anyway, I love the hand spun, and I liked the shawl. The shawl I was knitting was called Spellbound, and it was one of the Boo Knits, kind of all over lace. It had like a leafy lace at the top and then fancy bottom. And I think the last time you saw it, I was just about ready to start the edging. So I did the whole edging, and I added in, I had the kind of medium blue beads that I had started with, and I took that out. So there was like a little bit more of ripping on that shawl, and took that out, and I did all the way to the edge, and then I put on the other beads that I talked about. They were like a triangle cut bead, and I did that. And so because I had done a couple extra repeats of the top pattern, it was like there were a lot of stitches on it, and so it had a picot bind off. There were two options for bind offs. One was a picot bind off and one was a crochet bind off. And I kind of played around like with the crochet. I didn't really have the right size crochet hook, and you know, with this alpaca yarn there was not that much give, and I thought I really like how the picot bind offs look. So I thought I'm just going to do the picot bind off. So there were a lot of stitches on there because there were extra repeats. And so I didn't like push to get it done. I, you know, just was doing a little bit at a time. I would, you know, if I was going to watch a podcast, I would pick that up, and it was an especially kind of lengthy one because, you know, a lot of times it's you cast on 2, bind off 5 or something like that. This was cast on 2, bind off 3. So it was a really time consuming. So I kept going on, and I had enough yarn. It ended up, it took like 10 grams of yarn. So that just goes to show how long it was. And I got to the point where I had them on a circular needle where the end of the stitch, the unworked stitches, kind of you could stretch out on the circular. So I was like probably, you know, this far from the end. And I held it up and I thought, I don't think I like this. It was just not what I wanted for this yarn. And because this was hand spun, you know, if it was just like a regular, like a commercial yarn or whatever, I probably would have finished it and then showed it at camp, or, you know, given it away for the raffle or something like that, or, you know, or just giving it away to somebody. But because this was hand spun and I really love it so much, I want to keep it for myself. I want it to be kind of the shawl that I have in my head. So I ended up Friday night, I ripped it all the way back. And that's why it's back in a ball. And let me tell you, it takes a long time to do picot bind off. It takes a really long time to rip out picot bind off too. Because especially with this, because with the alpaca, it's got the little hairs and it's lace weight, and so I was trying to like be really careful. I didn't want it to break, and I was like, you'd have to, you know, like pry where the, you know, the little hairs apart and stuff. So it took quite a while to rip out. So now I'm kind of back to what do I want to do, and I'm thinking either two ways. I might do the shawl that was kind of the second runner up before I started this one, and that was Jenna Retro Lemon, Jenna's shawl that she designed last year. It was called Leaves, I think it was called Leaves of Change, but it was sort of a half or like a crescent kind of shape, but it had some leafy patterns in it too. So there's that one, or else there's this one, which I started in a different yarn last year and then it just languished and stuff. And this one is called Tiang Baru, I think. Yeah. And that's what that one looks like, but it's kind of solid at the top. It has some interesting kind of ways of increasing, and then this really fancy border. So I thought if I did this one, this might be a good project to take along to the retreat also, just because I might like want something a little more, with a little more to do, and then I could maybe get that, what I would think is to tend to be more boring section of the plain top part, kind of get that done when I have people to talk to and stuff, and then have the border, the fun stuff at the end. It does have, I don't know if it shows, it doesn't really show, but along the top edge because I know, because I started it last year, along the top edge, instead of just having a few stitches of garter stitch, um, you do kind of a little beaded edging along both edges. So there's that, and I think there's, probably 4 or 5 like rows in the pattern. So I think if I start it kind of maybe this afternoon and like work on that a little bit and kind of get that edging sort of in my head, then the rest of it should go. So that's where I am with my works in progress for off the needles. So I don't have anything brand new off the needles, but last time I showed you that I had finished the knitting on these mittens, and these were the first mittens for the Mitten Along, first mittens that I did. And these are from Solveig Larsen's Knitted Mittens book, and these were the Rowan pattern. And I knit these out of handspun also. It was in a Corriedale Angora blend yarn, and I spun the yarn for these years and years ago. So the knitting part was done, and then in that book she does a special fulling process for the mittens, and where she kind of alternates going between hot and cold water, back and forth, not kind of rubbing them like you would if you were trying to like really like make the stitches go away, but just to kind of get everything like tight. And then you lay them flat to dry, and after they're dry, you take a brush and you brush them. Well, so these had Angora in them. The yarn had Angora in it, so it had some loft to start with, but I did do the process, the fulling, hot to cold, and laid them flat. They do feel, they're still like really nice and soft. They feel maybe a little bit firmer. They didn't shrink at all, which I was worried because they were kind of the perfect size when I finished knitting them. But they didn't shrink, which I was glad. And you can still see the individual stitches. And so when they were dry, I just took a brush, and I didn't quite know like kind of what kind of brush to use, but I just took one that was sort of an old style natural bristle brush, and like brushed them. When I brushed the inside, because this is all stranded, I kind of went like sideways, like brushed this way, so that I didn't like, because I'm imagining these are going to felt down more, but I can still get my finger in between like the individual strands. So it didn't, when it did the fulling, it didn't like stick those strands like down, but I expect after they're worn once that they will stick down, because I know the boho sweaters that I've done, by the time the stranded color work is on the yoke on the shoulders, by the time I've worn them like once, it's all like felted down. So I imagine this will too, but it just kind of brought up the loft a little bit more on the inside. And so if you're on the fence about doing it, give it a try. I mean, you do have to have yarn that is not superwash, that has the chance of felting. It just sort of, you don't want to get the air through the fabric of the mittens, so that it keeps your hands warm in the winter. So time will tell whether that works or not. I do want to do more mittens out of that book, because there's some really pretty patterns. And I think what I might do, one of my items on my shopping list for next weekend at the ZK Market is I want to get a skein of MCN from Jeanette from Sun Valley Fibers to use for lining, because I did those stranded mittens in April that had the MCN lining, and those were really nice. And I think if I have some other yarns that are a little bit thicker, if I do it to sort of that gauge and then line them with MCN, then I'll know that, then I won't do the like fulling thing, but anyway, I'm going to try that too. So those were kind of my off the needles. So in spinning, I did a kind of a fair amount of spinning. I have some finished spinning, and that is, this is what I showed you, I think, when I just started. You can see it's a really full bobbin. This was spun on my Reeves, Rick Reeves frame wheel, and this was a loop bump. And so let's see if I can find the end. It's, you know, spun to, you know, pretty thin. I plan on Navajo plying it and seeing what happens. But it's a long gradient. The outside is a light pink, and then it goes to a black. It kind of progresses through darker and darker kind of pinks, maroons, wines, to get to black. And so I did finish that. And then I just have one other thing that I wanted to show you, and that's in Imaginary. And so this is the yarn that you used to see hanging up there, and this is this Color Shift yarn. Where's that orangest one? So it runs from this kind of orchidy color through all these different, let's see if I can get them here. So it's a gradient, but they're done in different, and it goes from like this kind of orangey melony color to all these different reds to the orchid. And these are the exact colors that are in the dress. So needless to say, this will not be destashed. And I don't know if mine came with this little thing of little beads. So I'm going to, I want to get like started on this, on a shawl out of this. And this is colorshiftyarn.etsy.com, and this is the Zinnia color. What did she call them? Color, not a gradient, but a color. I don't remember. Anyway, it is figurine weight yarn. It is New Zealand wool. It's softer than like Shetland. So I am going to knit a shawl out of this. And when I ordered it in my head, this is the shawl that I wanted to knit with it. This really pretty one. It's called Osa's shawl, designed by Christy Hulas, and it has kind of this drop stitch open work pattern in the top, which I think helps blend the colors because they look really close. But then when you, like, if you look on Ravelry and you see the different, you know, ones that, different designs and things that people have used this yarn for, if it's got like too much stockinette, you can see where the yarns, you know, change, or else you'd have to do a lot of like feathering, you know, alternating the new color in and stuff. So anyway, I was thinking about winding that, and that was another option. I thought if I don't get the green shawl going, maybe I will like wind up some of these and be able to do that drop stitch pattern when I'm gone. So anyway, there is that. So for show and tell, I just have a couple things I want to show you. I didn't show you this, but this is one thing that I did work on for a lot. Is I did a handout for my class for ZK. I'm doing a class on cast-ons, so that was not that I should have used for one of my finished projects. But I did get a new item that came in the mail. I was not expecting to get this. So, you know, I love my shoes. And I belong to a couple groups on Facebook. I don't really go to Facebook very much for like regular stuff, but there's a couple groups, like shoe groups that I'm in, and one of them is kind of a buy and sell group for fluvogs. And one of the shoes that got away a couple of years ago that I didn't get and then regretted came up for sale. And it was also one that I was pretty sure I knew my size in, because a lot of those shoes are, you know, different kind of, if you're that size in one style of shoe, you're not necessarily that size in every kind of family of shoes. But this one I was pretty sure I knew, and it came up and I thought, I need to get them. And so I ordered, so I, you know, bought them, and they came last week. So these are my new to me shoes. They're looking just black, but really this right here, I don't know if it's showing. It looks black, but it's like a really pretty blue. It's TARDIS blue, even though I'm not a Doctor Who person. That's what people describe it as who are. So it's blue velvet, and then the leather parts on it, the straps and the toe, are kind of black with like a blue, like they were blue and then they put black over the top, so the blue shows through a little bit. They're really pretty. These are, and they have this really cool like shaped heel. It's called the Baroque heel. And these are the Rubens. So these are not available anymore, but and they had this style of shoe for a long time, but the blue was only around for, the blue velvet was only around for one kind of season. And I remember at that point I was just going to kind of get one pair of shoes like a season, and I had chosen a different one, and these went up for sale like in the winter. And I remember it was kind of right between like when I came home from Hawaii and like when I went to Madrona, and I was thinking, I can't buy these shoes even though they were on sale. So it's like the first time I've ever bought like sort of hand-me-down shoes. I don't know. I think part of the reason why I love shoes so much is that when I was a kid, that was the one thing that I didn't have hand-me-down for, because I was the youngest, and I had two older sisters, and so I would get like a lot of hand-me-downs. And even though like sometimes they would be remade, my mom was really good at like, you know, kind of redoing things and changing things, so that if like we were in pictures like at Christmas time or something, that it didn't look like, oh, now she's wearing that dress, oh, now she's wearing that dress, you know, so that it didn't show up quite that much. But my dad was really adamant about, he had, you know, grown up during the Depression and had a lot of older brothers, and so I think he spent a lot of time when he was little like with shoes that didn't fit. And I remember him saying that he thought like he had foot problems when he was like an adult, that went back to the like time when he had, you know, when he was a little boy and he had shoes that were too small or whatever. And so that was the one thing that he was like totally adamant about, is like we had to have like, you know, when we needed new shoes, I just didn't get old ones passed down to me. I got brand new ones. So that was like, I loved to go shoe shopping. So I think that's maybe where part of my like shoe love comes from. So it was like a little weird to get like used shoes, but they are as seen as they're like blue velvet. Like she said I wore them like twice. She's like, they're just not my style. And like she wore them to like, Christmas party or whatever. I will wear them all the time because I think they're beautiful and they are like wonderful. So there is that. And I thought I put these on this morning and I thought I will show you these because they are cool. They just look like these big earrings. My hair is long enough to like pull back so I can get out the like some of my earrings from back when, like I think of them as my chemo earrings because, the shorter the hair, the bigger the earring. So these are a single carnation petal that is just in resin, and like one like petal plucked out and then coated in resin, and so they're really lightweight, but they're like big. So anyway, I thought I would show you. They come from my friend Michelle, she has an Etsy store. It's called Remix, REMIK''S. But she does a lot of all the like flower jewelry, generally that I'm wearing, come from her. She usually does art fairs up here in the summer times, and this year she's not going to be here. So, but then she goes to Texas in the winter. But she has an Etsy store, and she has a lot of times post things on Facebook that and you can just buy from, when you see the pictures. So anyway, I am really looking forward to this week. I am leaving Wednesday. I'm going to go through Winona and do all my Winona stuff that I always like to do. Go to Watkins and my mom's grew up there, or she partly in Winona, partly on a farm outside Winona in Oak Ridge, and so I usually go to the cemetery and put flowers on my grandmother's grave, and they have the most incredible bakery that I love to go to, and Watkins, there's a yarn shop there, and drive past like all the houses. And anyway, I have like that day is sort of like planned, and then it's just like a hop to Rochester. And then my class is on Thursday. Thursday afternoon, we're going to do this painting where, you all, like there's a whole group and they all paint like one certain picture. I've never done that before, but I think it sounds like so fun. I don't even know. I don't even care what the picture looks like. I just think it's going to be fun to do. So it's just going to be fun to see everybody again, and I'm looking forward to it. So if you are going to ZK and I don't already know who you are, please come and say hi to me, because I would love to meet you. So I will have probably stories about that next week. And until I see you next week or at ZK, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.